If you've never been to Washington, and whether you're moving here for a job opportunity or if you're just coming to visit for a weekend, I record this video to give you a screen share Google Maps overview of the geography. So we're gonna kind of zoom out, look at the whole state of Washington and what it has to offer. And then we'll talk about some particular areas, including the city of Seattle, the east side, where you might wanna live, and what are some of the places you might wanna visit while you're here. And I do this with just about every single client that I have that is moving from out of state to the state of Washington. And we just do it over Zoom via screen share with the handy tool of Google Maps. And they always find it very informative to understand the overall landscape of Washington state. So if that's you, be sure to watch the whole video. And if you have any questions or you want more information about any particular part of the Washington state, feel free to reach out. So let's get right into it. So if we look at the map of Washington state, you will see that basically most of the living is concentrated here around the Seattle area because the state itself has multiple mountain ranges. In the middle of a state, it's kind of divided into two parts, if you will. We have Western Washington and Eastern Washington, which is separated by the Cascade Mountains. So everywhere in Eastern Washington, the climate is different. It's much more dry. There's wine country, and kind of rural areas. While on the west side, where we're closer to the Pacific Northwest, to the Puget Sound, and the Seattle city itself, that's where most people, it's the most densely populated area. That's where all the job opportunities are and dense housing communities. So from the broader look, if we zoom in into this general area around Puget Sound, where you see Seattle in the center of the map at the moment, it's basically a tri-county area that's most densely populated. So we have King County, then we have Snohomish up above, and we have Pierce County that includes Tacoma and its surrounding cities. In the Seattle itself, the city center is surrounded by bodies of water on both sides. So we have the Puget Sound, which feeds into the Pacific Ocean, and we have Lake Washington here in the middle. If you're flying into Seattle, you'll probably come in through the SeaTac Airport, which is our biggest international airport. We have another one up north that's newer, which is called the Painfield, but SeaTac is kind of the most popular destination for those coming in. So you will land here. It's just about 20 minutes or so to downtown Seattle and 20 minutes to downtown Bellevue, depending on traffic. And if we zoom out just one more time, you will see that Seattle's, I guess the city of Seattle is right in the middle between, almost an equal distance between Portland and Vancouver. So it's about 3 hours south to get to Portland, Oregon, and it's about 3 hours or so up north, maybe a little less, to Vancouver, and then you're in Canada. In the city of Seattle itself, so downtown Seattle would be considered like a business district, right? That's where if we look at the terrain map, you could even just see all the high rises, lots of business towers, high rise condos are all here in the city. And then we have Space Needle, which is a very popular attraction. South Lake Union neighborhood, this right here is where Amazon is headquartered, right on the shores of Lake Union. So it's a bustling, vibrant city center, if you will, for Amazon employees. I think Amazon has over 50,000 employees in the city of Seattle. And then south of the business district, we have Chinatown and then what's called SoDo. So SoDo is the southern district. It's kind of the industrial park, if you will. There's more warehouses, but there's also cool breweries and retail destinations. Starbucks is also headquartered here in SoDo. So we've looked at where people work in Seattle, and if you wanted to live on the west side, here in the Seattle area, if you will, there's lots of popular neighborhoods to consider. If you wanted to live in a high-rise condo, then downtown Seattle or South Lake Union is the place for you. Some of the other areas, such as Queen Anne, is a very popular. It's up a hill from the city. It has spectacular views of the city skyline. It's a very desirable area. We also have Magnolia, which is also next to the Discovery Park. Magnolia is a very popular, and between Magnolia and Queen Anne, those are the more expensive homes in the city of Seattle. And then the farther you go out, you can go in Fremont and Ballard and Green Lake. These are also very popular destinations north of the city, but still within the city limits. And the homes there are a bit more affordable as compared to Queen Anne and Magnolia. And then here on the east side of the city, over on the east side of I-5, we have Madison Park, Central District, Magnolia, Madison Park, Washington Park, Broadmoor, Montlake. These are also very old. You'll find standard homes built in early 1920s, lots of big mansions, beautiful, beautiful architecture, and very desirable areas to live within the city limits. And the way we kind of talk about Western Washington in general, so we kind of have the west side and the east side, and that's in between Lake Washington, which is this lake here right in the middle. So when we talk about the east side, it would include Bellevue, Kirkland, and basically everything east of Lake Washington that we're looking at. And if you're living on the west side, you're usually within the city limits of Seattle. And the way to get around kind of all over this King County area, so if we look at King County specifically, you'll see it's a big county, but then again, that includes part of the mountain ranges, and most of the dense population is here on the west side of King County. And then the way you get around King County is there's many ways, many roads, as you can see here on the map, but the main freeways are going north and south are I-5, and then we have 405 on the east side. So I-5 runs through the city center of Seattle, and then 405 goes through the city center of Bellevue, and that's the way to get in and out of both of those cities. And then going east and west, we have 520 Bridge, which takes you from I-5 or from the Seattle side across Lake Washington through Bellevue into Redmond and beyond. And then down below we have I-90 Bridge, which goes through Mercer Island, also feeds into Bellevue, and then goes all the way east through Issaquah, Snoqualmie, North Bend, and you can get to the mountain ranges and for skiing and eastern Washington through I-90. 520 is a toll bridge here, so basically, so you do pay a daily toll to get across the bridge. And also there are now tolls enacted on 405 if you want to use express lanes. So if you're in the other lanes, there is no charge to go through 405, but there has been a toll that's enacted for the fast lanes to pay for the expansion. And basically, the rule of thumb is going north and south, the traffic is usually miserable. So whether you're I-5 or 405, if you want to get to the city from either north going south or the other way around during rush hour, they get backed up and congested. The I-90 and 520 are a bit easier. Again, we still get congestion getting into the city centers of Seattle and Bellevue, but as you go farther out, usually traffic flows much better, and that's one of the reasons why so many people want to live on the east side here, because even though you might be farther on the map, the commute into the city isn't as bad as, let's say, from North Seattle as an example. And then if we talk about prices, I guess, or the cost of living, an easy way to think of it is if you drop a pin in the middle of Lake Washington right here, and then the closer you are to the water, the more expensive real estate is, and the farther out you go, the more affordable real estate is. The most expensive areas and zip codes here are basically in West Bellevue. This area, mainly between 520, 405, I-90, and Lake Washington. Oh gosh, my lines are terrible. So we have Medina, Clyde Hill, and downtown Bellevue. These are some of the most expensive zip codes, and especially along the shores of Lake Washington here, west facing Lake Washington waterfront is the most expensive real estate in all of Washington state. So this is where Bill Gates and all of the other billionaires kind of live up along, usually in Medina, along the shores of Lake Washington. And then talking about most expensive real estate, we also have this part of Medina is Evergreen Point Road, we have Hunts Point, and then we have Yarrow Point. So these are the 3 points on the shores of Lake Washington where also are very desirable and very, very expensive. But Bellevue itself it's a pretty big city. It's the second in size after Seattle, and here on the map you can kind of see where the boundaries of Bellevue are. So Medina and Clayton Hill are actually incorporated as their own cities, even though they're very, very close to downtown Bellevue. So again, in this section here is some of the most expensive real estate and downtown Bellevue itself. So if you're staying in Bellevue, for example, if you're staying at a hotel, you're probably somewhere here right in the core of downtown. And we have a beautiful Bellevue Downtown Park. Bellevue Square Mall is right next to it for shopping. There's tons of restaurants, nightclubs, coffee shops, the list goes on. It's a very, very vibrant and desirable place to live. This blue dot right here, this is actually where my office is. So we're walking distance to downtown Bellevue. So if you're in town, give me a call and come visit me at the office. But looking at Bellevue, at all of Bellevue, again, kind of what we talked about. The farther from Lake Washington you are, the more affordable it is. So still wonderful, wonderful neighborhoods of Crossroads or Lake Hills here, or we have a Cougar Mountain where there's a Lakemont neighborhood. All of these are more of the suburban residential areas on the outside of the downtown core of city of Bellevue that are still very, very popular. And then if we zoom out from Bellevue again, as I mentioned, East Side is, if you want city lifestyle, most people tend to want to be in Seattle. If you want more of the suburban lifestyle, East Side is where most people end up being drawn to. And these are all suburban areas, bigger homes with yards, better schools, all of that. And so if we look at Lake Washington here in the middle of my map, everything east of it would be considered the East Side, at least what we would call it here, East Side. So that includes Bellevue, we just talked about. Kirkland is very popular. And then going a little north, we have popular destinations such as Bothell, Woodinville. So in talking about Bellevue, we just talked about some of the most desirable and expensive real estate that we have here. And now let's kind of go a little farther out and talk about some other destinations that you might want to consider if you're moving here. So we already made a little metaphor about if you drop a pin of Lake Washington, the farther you go out. So outside of Bellevue, the next kind of wave, if you will, we have very popular destinations of Kirkland, Newcastle, and then bleeding into Sammamish and Redmond. Redmond is where the headquarters of Microsoft is, so it's a very popular destination for those working on the Microsoft campus. And then if we go even a little farther out in either direction, so up north we have Bothell, Woodinville, Kenmore, Linwood. This whole area is also, you'll find homes maybe in the medium price range around anywhere 900 to 1.1, 1.2. And they still are close to all of the city centers and all of the major employers. And then if we're going east of Bellevue, we already touched on Sammamish a little bit. So we have Sammamish, Issaquah, Falls City, Snoqualmie, all of these towns over here. And they look, Snoqualmie as an example, and then even North Bend, which is farther east. A lot of people are deterred by those areas because they seem so far on the map. But the reality, we talked about traffic, and there's rarely congestion on I-90 going from that far out. So for example, from Snoqualmie, you could get into the city of Seattle in a matter of 40-45 minutes, even during rush hour, which is very reasonable considering that it might take you the same amount of time to get to Seattle from Bothell or something, which looks much closer on the map. And then if we go south of Bellevue, we have areas such as Newcastle, Renton over here, Fairwood, and then even farther south. These are also very popular destinations because the prices are more affordable than they are in Bellevue or Seattle, yet you're still within a commute distance and you get more bang for your buck. So again, if you want to live in the suburban neighborhood and have a house with a yard in a safe community with good schools, all of these are options to consider. So we briefly touched on and talk about where most people live that end up moving here, mainly for job opportunities. But if you're here visiting, as a bonus tip, I want to give you some things to do. So if you just have a day to spend in the city of Seattle, everything is very much close by between the Space Needle, the Pike Place Market, and I actually did a whole nother video on the top 10 things to visit and do in Seattle if you're visiting. So be sure to check out that video. I think you'll find that very informative. If you have a little more time and you want to venture outside of the city, you can always, if you love the nature, you can go east to Issaquah, Snoqualmie, and those areas. There's tons of beautiful hikes. Snoqualmie has Snoqualmie Falls, which is a very impressive, actually it's a waterfall that's taller than Niagara Falls. It's not as wide, but it is taller, and it's a beautiful destination kind of out of the city, yet still within less than an hour drive. And if you have more than a day to spend, and again, you love to explore, the San Juan Islands are absolutely gorgeous. And you can get here, so you can see these are the San Juans right here, and they're close to Victoria and Canada, and you can get there multiple ways. You could take a Victoria Clipper, which is basically a boat that will take you there. It takes just a few hours to get. You probably see some whales along the way. There's also Kenmore Air offers day trips on a seaplane, which you definitely should look into, and you can access all the San Juan Islands, or you could even go into Victoria on a seaplane, which is gorgeous. Or we also have a network of just standard ferries that will take you to closer islands such as Bremerton, Whidbey, and so on, and farther out into the San Juans. So There's so much to do here in Seattle, and that's the reason why it's such a popular destination. For most people that I tend to work with, it's usually their job opportunity that brings them here to Washington, but it's a quality of life and an abundance of things to explore and do year-round is what keeps them here and makes them fall in love with Washington State. I hope you found this video helpful. I know it was very brief, but it's almost impossible to cram everything into a short video. And my goal was just to give you a rough overview of where everything is within this beautiful Pacific Northwest. If you have specific questions about anything in particular, make sure you reach out, or otherwise check out some of my other videos, because I've done tons of videos about specific neighborhoods and things to do and different real estate options and so on and so forth. And subscribe to the channel because I keep putting them out weekly. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.